Welcome. Patreon.com/Taylor Durden. Check me out. So yeah, Scarlett, there we go. From the motherfucking bunker. I don't know why. Oh, there we go.
Hi, can you hear me good? Yeah.
Yeah, you hear me good?
No.
All right, word.
Hopefully better than last time's quality.
Oh yeah,
Off like
yeah.
the audio
No, it usually
so
IG is
bad.
pretty solid. We should.
All right, so thanks for joining me. So I wanted this talk to be about love versus parasites, and you're kind of the parasite expert, this spiritual pest control. um,
Yeah,
so what's
I'm the
it?
working man. I'm the spiritual
Yeah.
working man.
So I first found you
Yeah.
through Tantra, actually. I was like researching Tantra videos and I really loved your Tantra videos. But I think like where you kind of have this special bit of wisdom that I don't find in other places is where you talk about parasites. And I've been discovering lately that it's the rabbit hole goes so much deeper than I thought, because I'm seeing the physical and the spiritual parallels of parasitic consciousness. So I wanted to like share that so we could share with people because I think it's like mind blowing. And then kind of bring in Dr. Sabi, who's kind of like grandpa that like helped with all this wisdom. So where do we start? All right, so maybe you can share a bit about your initial discovery of this, like when that burst of consciousness like happened for you, like like realizing that your diet needed to change and like what spurred that and like what did you experience?
Yeah, like I had my brother's best friend was like Rastafarian. He was Trinidadian, and so he was really into vegetarianism. And my brother's 7 years older than me, so I kind of got introduced to vegetarianism real young, and he was really, probably the strongest guy I knew at the time. So like, as far as like core strength and like actual like hand strength and things that I me personally I value. You know what I mean? Like things that you can actually do in real life. I mean, there's not many times in life that you actually have to bench press, but you might have to pick up your body weight. You might have to box, things like that. So I felt like he actually was the strongest person I knew, and he was vegetarian. And so it was just like kind of in my mind that this is possible. And then I was just trying to get an edge athletically in sports. And, I had a friend he was a trainer. We used to work out together, and he was like, "Hey man, you should check out this guy named Dr. Sebi." And it's funny because he's a
Oh,
Lithuanian guy. It's not like it's like yeah, it's not like it's like some black dude or whatever. You know what I mean? It's a fucking Lithuanian. You know what I mean? He was like, "Yo, this dude Dr. Sebi." He was like, "This dude Dr. Sebi is he's real, man." And he really wasn't even like so having so much emphasis on the diet. He was more so like, yo, man, carbon is melanin, yo. This is why, melanin or carbon or whatever is powerful or whatever. Because we were into sports and stuff, and like he was just making like the carbon connection as far as like, why Usain Bolt is Usain Bolt, you know what I mean, and not somebody else, you know what I mean, and it made sense to me. It all made sense to me, but I really was like, I went so like I just wanted to know everything that Sebi had to say. I just analyzed every video, and then it brought me to other people like Dr. Africa and Bobby Hemmett and Phil Valentine and a lot of people that like had I feel like they had little gems and jewels, different ways of putting things that I feel like was helpful. Because like it's like you're once you I think you already know, and then you hear somebody like Sebi talk, and you're like, oh, this is confirmation. And then you hear other people, their delivery. I feel like studying them is more so like, how can I tell other people? Because I already feel like I know, but I
Yeah.
just want other people to know. So that's kind of why, yeah, that's kind of why I really wanted to learn how to communicate it as
And
best as
there's
possible.
something about, because I'm experiencing that right now, like there's something about when you come across the truth and it's not like the typical like school wisdom, you know, like this is study this and memorize this because science says this, like what I'm experiencing with Dr. Sabi and like going, you know, like learning about him, it's like there's it's like a magnet. Like some things like keep digging, right? Like did you experience that? Like it's like there's something like profound there with what he's sharing that's just like calls to you, right? Like the information.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like you kind of just like rotate to different, I guess, veins of knowledge or whatever, and like it kind of almost felt like a wall, like a governor. Like Sebi was there, kind of giving me a guideline, and then that was kind of like my training wheels, and then for years it was like my safety net, kind of as far as like uh, just communicating health and everything, and then experimenting with it more and more. I started to like get into like uncharted territory in a sense because I think Sebi knew a lot more than he communicated, and so like I think the further you go down the path of this, I think that you just have to figure it out for yourself some stuff, and it's like kind of nobody's been there before really, so it's you know so maybe they have, but they might not. They're just not communicating it online, So I think yeah, like it forced me to like kind of have to just continually experiment and continually like come back to the drawing board to like better explain the stuff because Sebi, I feel like Sebi was like for a different
Yeah.
generation.
And I think what's interesting is like a lot of people have heard of him, but I don't think a lot of people know exactly what he was talking about. Because like popularly, a lot of people know him, and when I have conversations with people, they say like, oh, but yeah, like he talked about veganism, and it's like that's really not it, you know. And so it's super
Yeah.
tricky because there's something way more deeper and profound than just talking about veganism because there's a lot. Remember, there's like this phase like a couple years ago, like veganism had this like upsurge, and you saw these like vegan YouTubers and like oh vegan, and then all of a sudden you saw like oh veganism doesn't work, we're getting sick, blah blah blah. And meanwhile, Dr. Sebi is like you see his image and his stuff like popping up in social media, but it's like no one really. I think people didn't really tune into the fine print. I didn't actually until recently, and that's the part where we actually get into his philosophy and what he talked about. Well, not philosophy, but his wisdom, right? And talking about
Yeah.
like the starch and the acid foods and all this stuff. Like, how is it that people are not taking it more seriously? Like, why do you think people aren't, like, why is he not getting the credit for, what he's found? It's almost like people just like, you look over it, or people just don't. It should be looked at as something important.
It's kind of been yeah, it's lost its luster because I feel like it kind of got mainstreamed and then people like just adjusted their lives to where they could still continue to do the wrong things, but like in a slightly like worse way. And I feel like Sebi's message really got diluted because the way the internet was, man, it used to be really kind of an open forum, and a lot of stuff was there. Like if you search for something back when I was searching for Sebi, like all the shit would come up, fully intact videos. Now if you search Sebi, like the emphasis is totally the food, not the biochemistry side, really, not the historical side of Sebi, not his own experiential side. It's more so just like, quinoa and spelt and like, you know, finding ways to eat carbs that are, a little better for you, I feel like.
Right. But so I just watched a video of his, and I think is more like onto his message. And he's talking about how like humans would love themselves and love others if internally they didn't have that acid like eating away. And I think that's kind of the main premise, right? Is like when you're infesting yourself with parasites from the food, then the human consciousness becomes parasitic, and then we lose our connection to each other. So I would love to go deeper into that and like your experience of that.
Yeah. Man, I mean, like that's that's I guess that's the gist of it. Sebi basically just saying that people are foul to one another because of the starch converting into carbonic acid in your system, and then you know ultimately I feel like he points like points you in a direction to where you eventually connect the dots. Like you eat this sugar, fungus, candida and stuff, convert the sugar into the ethanol into alcohol, and that's how they can feed. They feed off the alcohol. They don't feed off the sugar. They turn it into alcohol, and in that process, you have like a, a subtle cirrhosis of the liver, a subtle drying out of the liver. You know, the liver produces anger, or is responsible for anger when it's not when it's not functioning right. So most people's actions, they have a deep fear in their liver, because anger is just a different shade of fear, really. So I feel like that's what it brought me to, is like ultimately, like, yeah, you eat the starch, you eat the dead foods and everything, and then different parts of the body become compromised because of the mucus turning into plaque. The parasites nest in the plaque, and then that organ or organ system is now operated by parasites, and you're abusing your I guess your emotional body or your emotional health, to where your relationship with life is foul, and yeah, people don't treat each other right.
Did you notice a difference in yourself, like when you switched the foods? Like, did it make you feel more peaceful? Like, did your emotional landscape change?
Yeah, yeah, for me, like, I feel like I did everything kind of drastically, to where, like, I was sober from I really didn't drink that much. I drank here and there in high school, because like I switched at like 18. That's when I found out about Sebi. It was like midway through 18, and so like I I felt like I was relatively sober, but I was not sober off of food, and I didn't really realize that until converting, I guess you could say, to veganism. And I went right into like raw foods and everything, so it was such a drastic change, and I felt really. It started off with fasting, because I felt like that's what resonated with me the most, like what Sebi had to say about fasting, and I got sick because I had dipped in my diet, like I just like conceded, and I had like shitty foods for like 3 or 4 days straight. Then I was sick, and then I was like, man, I don't have no appetite. I'm gonna fast, and I had the confidence to do it because I'm listening to Sebi. So I fasted for like 4 days on nothing but water, and I just felt remarkable. I never felt like that before. So then, I had like juice the following 3 or 4 days, and from that point on, like in that period, as I felt better and better, I was just studying him more and more so that I could get like the particulars down, because I had like the broad idea of it. Like, okay, you want the cells to breathe more. His product is called viento. Viento means wind or whatever in Spanish, and the whole thing is about iron and breathing and the cells being able to breathe. That's like the whole basis of his diet. And so I was like, this makes sense, because if you look at athletes, they go into hyperbaric chambers so that their body can have better air to heal. And then you see like athletes doing like blood doping, where they cycle the blood out of their system or whatever, and recycle it back in so that it can be more rich. And it's like this whole thing is just about circulation and the cells breathing and breathing. So like I knew that like in a broad sense, but I didn't know it like in a in an actual experiential sense. So like in that 7, 8 day period of fasting, I went back to him, and I was like, let me just get the particulars. And so it just made me super anal about it, where I was like, yo, nothing cooked mad shit I just would not touch. Like, as far as food was concerned, because all he pretty much permitted was coconuts. He's like, yo, coconut water, probably the only thing that's real. You know what I mean? And
Right.
so I feel like I was like, man, everything he's saying is true. I've never felt this good before, so I'm gonna gravitate more towards that direction. So when I came back to food, it was only fruits and vegetables, and I felt way better than I ever felt before, and I couldn't relate to anybody, like, because I had met one raw vegan when I was like maybe 3 or 4 months before Sebi. I met this raw vegan lady. She was like 70 something, and she was super calm. She was Jamaican, I think. She was some type of West Indian, but she was like super calm, and her skin looked so clear. You know what I mean? I always had a problem with my skin, so like I don't know, it just stuck with me that I never met nobody that calm in my life.
Wow.
So yeah,
It's true.
so
Food does.
yeah, so when I fasted, I just felt such a deep calm. You know what I mean? And then like when I changed my diet, like I just felt so much more calm to where I just didn't relate to people, and I felt like I didn't want to concede with food, so I started to concede with weed, and I feel like I went from like being sober off all drugs and stuff, and only eating like food as drugs, to like going into weed to like kind of have friends, because I felt like I was just on an island. It was really like at that time it was like even hard to find quinoa, like quinoa's at Walmart now. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, true.
Like this is like 15 years ago, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like
Gone way better.
it was it was hard to find shit. So I was like, damn, like I feel so alone out here. The only way that I can even sit down with people and have conversations, because there's no medium to do it with, like at the time. Like I wasn't patient at the time, and I didn't get into constructive mediums to communicate. So I just started smoking weed. Like I had been high before, but I only been high like 2 times in my life by the time that I heard of Sebi. Because weed to me was just like a waste of time. But then I just felt so estranged from humanity
Right.
that I was like, I fuck it. I guess I'll just get high, because, at the time, Sebi's like endorsing it too, and I feel like that that's probably one of the worst parts of the Sebi experience. I feel like, because I think people take his appreciation for weed out of context.
Right. And I think you like touched on one of the points, like when you said like the coconut water thing, like it's probably the only thing that's real. I think that's the most like insane part about all this is like he's trying to like show people like the food is fake, like everything's fake, like carrots aren't real, celery's not real. Like, and like it's like if you don't pay attention to what he's saying, you can miss it. And it's like I think what happens is like you when you go into that going back to like organic consciousness, that at least that's what I'm experiencing right now too, is like when you tune back into that, you can see like all the fragmentation and the parasitic behavior on the external. You're like, oh my god. And like it's so clear, like the mirror, like as within so without. It's like it like I feel like you can almost see like your microbiome like projected outwards, and then you see like where's the real you and like where's the parasites.
Yeah,
Like that insane, like mind blowing. So like um I think maybe we should share like some of the few things that that Dr. Sabi shared that some people, like maybe people listening aren't that familiar with him, but so mainly like the hybrid foods, right? So with like our fruits and vegetables, a lot of them are hybrid. So they're made in laboratory and crossed through grafting or like forced pollination. And then because you have you're combining two like DNA structures that are not meant to be combined. You have like an incomplete molecular structure, and then I think that creates a gap where like parasites come in, or it's like you. That's why like when you notice like when you eat like real food, you're like satiated, like not in a like gluttonous satiation, but you kind of feel complete. Like I could tell, like with the organic foods, you feel complete, even though it's lighter. But with the hybrid foods and the starchy foods, like you feel like you want more. and it's insane. But basically, like these food are drugs. Like they're not like
Not
drugs that
communicating with you.
would you say like drugs are things that if we think about drugs, addiction, and habits, like would you say that they're like incomplete, kind of like incomplete cycles, right? Like you need more. Like the drug, like what is it like? How would you describe that? Like the mechanism of like the addiction to needing more.
Yeah, it's kind of like what he was saying about the carrot. Like, you hybridize these two things, and like the binding agent that brings them together is starch. Like, what I mean? Because starch is, like the glue. And so, like, when you cross pollinate, and like you're gonna, the further away in relation, vibratory relation the two plants are, if they're far away, then you're gonna have a greater amount of starch having to like fill those gaps, like what you're talking about, like. And yeah, I feel like it's just incomplete light. I feel like I guess that's like what you can boil it all down to is like we're just inundated with like incomplete light in so many different ways. Like, what whether it be the radiation from because it's just radiation. You know what I mean? Like all it is radiance. And so like the food is since it's not natural and it's not performing the mineral absorption or the conversion of rocks into liquid, like you were saying, iron trophosis. Uh, According to Edward Schutz, I know he always used to quote Edward Schutz. He was like, hybrid plants cannot convert rocks in the ground into liquid food. They can only
Like
gather.
he says,
Huh?
like he calls it like electrical food or something, like electric.
Yeah, yeah, because like natural plants can convert. They can pull the iron out of the ground, and then since iron is a magnetic element, it attracts all the other elements to it. So if you're getting a natural plant that has the power to pull, turn iron in the ground from rock into liquid, then you're getting that plant is getting a ton of other minerals. But if you get like something that's fake, then it can't perform that. It's a dependent plant that can't exist on its own, and it has to, you have to feed it. It can only eat from like water and air and sun. It can do photosynthesis, but it can't. It's not structured correctly. It's just like structured water because the plants are mostly water, and it's like if it's not genetically complete, then the structure of the light, the radiance, is incomplete. So your body is gonna have to work overtime to make it complete. And it's just like if you eat some raisins, like you become dry because your body has to give up water to turn that raisin back into a grape in order for you to process it because the body can only process complete foods. So if you eat grains or stuff, anything that's incomplete genetically, it's going to have a taxing effect where it's going to pull minerals from your system in order to process it. And then the body just gets depleted over time. And then, yeah, you just experience different symptoms of sickness.
Like the chemical affinity, basically, like the matching vibrations of the food.
Yeah, I think listening to Sebi will bring you to that point where you're like, certain foods can only make you healthier if you're sicker or lower vibration than the food. Like, you're really, really sick, then you just eat quinoa and spelt and shit for like however long, and then that doesn't have an effect anymore because you're now vibrating higher than that. So now you need foods that's even more alive. Fruits and vegetables, whatever. You do that for a long amount of time, and then that doesn't really have an effect anymore. So then you're having just the things that have the most complete genetic structure, which would be like the herbs, because they're the least tampered with thing left. And that's why, like one of the last videos before like he died in like the last few years, he was saying like he was talking to somebody in Jamaica about this shit, and they were like, so what do you think about breatharianism? He was like, that's really the way we're supposed to be living. He was like, how am I this old and I haven't eaten anything for 21 days except for herbs and water, and like you know, and he's taxing himself by smoking weed probably too. I'm assuming so. It's even more kind of incredible.
Right.
Yeah. So you
It's
got
like there's
yeah.
like levels of consciousness, right? Like the denser is like needing like to have meat and grains or like heavier carb food. And then I feel like it's like the more you ascend in consciousness, like it's both ways. Like the higher you vibrate, the less you can tolerate those foods. And also like the more you're gonna need to change your diet because you're gonna feel it more. Like you become more sensitive. Like you can't. That's what I'm experiencing. Is like you, like what you
Yeah,
could tolerate before you. It's like you feel it now. It's like you can feel anxiety. But
yeah,
I think it's important to like talk about a lot of people. Okay, I don't know about you, but when I like talk to people and they talk about veganism and stuff, they some people get really mad, like, oh, I tried veganism and I got sick and bruh, and it's like obviously they didn't have that information, or I think being vegan actually like and eating the fake fruits and vegetables is probably more toxic than just eating the meat because maybe like the animal like synthesizes the food in some sense, like rather than like the fakeness of the fruits and vegetables. But I feel like if people were able to get like the nutrition from uh, the produce, like have enough access to the real food, they probably wouldn't crave meat as much. But it's like, what do people do at this point when so much of the produce has been tampered with? And it's like, some people feel like a lot of people genuinely have felt sick or like they can't do it, or like how do they how do we even present that as an option or an idea to someone that like it's not that you need the meat, it's that the meat is giving you is stepping in for the lack of nutrition from the fake produce, you know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, it really is a totally different outlook on life, man. You got to look at it like you're shifting from heterotrophic to autotrophic. You know what I mean? Heterotrophs, they eat other things light to sustain themselves, and autotrophs, they produce their own light to sustain themselves. And like, it's like people want to switch their diet and stuff, but it's a holistic approach. Like, you're gonna switch your diet, but then everything else in your life has to change, or you're gonna keep relapsing.
Like a drug.
Like,
Like
if you work, say if you work for like um Halliburton or something, or if you know what I mean, you work for Monsanto or something, and then and you know what I'm saying, and then you go raw vegan. That's just gonna be miserable because your life doesn't even match the diet. Like so much of your will is given up to parasites. Outside of the diet end of it. Like, if you're going more towards like being an autotroph, you're gonna have to create more in your life instead of being dependent and like relying on external means of making a living. Like, it's not that you won't work alongside people. It's just like you really want to get to the point where you're your own, you have autonomy, where you're either your own boss or you all work together, in some type of structure to where you have a common goal that's in alignment with growth, like real creation, instead of just like working at I don't know, wherever people were selling insurance or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's like that all has to go. Like, all of that shit has to go, and that's what people don't want to let go of. So the
also
food,
the social
they
factor, right? Like the social, like so much of our socializing is like food. Like, oh, let's go to dinner, and like oh, there goes going to restaurants.
yeah, I know, man. I mean, yeah, it's like it really is. We're surrounded by a sensual society that attacks our senses and peer pressures us into sedation. Synchronized sedation to feel like a fleeting artificial sense of oneness, because we don't want to, we're not one within ourselves. So people feel like there's something missing, and like there's no way you're gonna develop a huge hunger if you fucking work for State Farm, or if you work for, like if you work for I don't know, any corporation really, and the corporation isn't in alignment with, the betterment of the collective and the growth of um, people, then there's going to be a hunger there, and you're going to fill that, that void with something, whether it be drugs or sex or food that you shouldn't eat. And it's really a holistic approach. It's not like the food is like the more mechanical end of it, like it definitely is a big part. You should definitely change up what you put in your body, but it's not like it just dies there. Like you can just continue, like you can just have a great diet and then work for fucking Google. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not, you know what I'm saying? Like there's good, like you're giving, a lot of your will up to something that is against you. So it's going to be a conflict of interest. Like that's what a parasite really is like a doppelganger or something, within you that is against you, like against like the true nature. And, like you said, like, when you're shifting your diet, you start to see like the expression of that parasite outward. You can see it like in your coworkers and all the people around you, your boss maybe, or your friends even, family, you know,
Yeah.
everything got to shift. Like you can't just do one thing. It's like the whole life has to change.
Yes. Okay. So I want to talk about this parasite consciousness, right? Because talking about love versus parasites, and everything you said aligns with that reality. Like the less parasites you embody, the more love you have to embody and fill in for yourself. Like I think you mentioned in your videos, like the parasites are like parallel sites, like they fit in where there's gaps, right? They're in the empty kind of spaces.
Yeah. Whatever you don't inhabit.
Yeah. Okay. So what I've been finding in my research that's super fascinating, and to just show people like the extent of like how insidious it is. So there's different types of parasites, right? There's one parasite called the Toxoplasma gondii, and I think it will use like the cat. It'll like cat's poop, and it'll actually convince mice to like it'll like attract mice somehow, and like put the mouse like in a threat to be eaten by the cat. Like they're so intelligent. Like I was reading about all these different species. Like there's one that like causes the ant to like go climb up to the top of like the grass, and then it like punctures its head, and then it'll like spread its spores onto like the rest of the population. And then they're talking about even like rabies. If you consider like the virus of rabies, like it'll create like anger in the animal, and then it'll have aggression, and then that aggression will make it like bite, and so it spreads. So it's like the the amount of intelligence that they have and how they drive behavior is fascinating, because I don't think people realize like when you behave, you go out and you go into society, you go to work, do you even realize that that's not possibly not the real you, so many people, they force their behavior, right? And they're like, I have to do this, I have to. And it's like moving in the colonies, right? Like the little workplaces and the the teams and the hobbies and the bars. And it's like, is that really you, or is that a parasite speaking and thinking for you? Isn't that just like, to me that's like one
Yeah.
of the crazy parts about it, is like, oh my god, like they're driving like human behavior. And a lot of it, talking about sexuality, sacred sexuality, they will actually hijack a person's consciousness to make them more aroused to have sex so that they can reproduce and pass on. So a lot of times what people feel sexually, and our society's been so like separated from the organic sexuality that's like love based, like heart based, and then sexual, like it's more like parasitic, right? Like people just want to grab, like, give me your energy. gimme, like parasitic. And it's literally the parasites. Like I feel if the food changes and the consciousness changes, that behavior is going to change too.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, man. I mean, especially with the sex end of it, like 1 billion people on Earth are related to Genghis Khan, and he was just him and his clan were just going from village to village, from the Far East all the way to Europe, you know, just raping. Uh, Connection.
I'm going to back now.
You kind of broke out. I got you now. I see you now. But no, I was saying like Genghis Khan was, he would him and his clan, and they would go into every village from the Far East all the way to Europe, and they would rape at least 1 out of every 10 women. So now it's like at least 1 billion people that are related to this one guy that had a parasite, and it's really, I don't know. The parasite itself, you gotta look at it like the things that it needs to sustain itself. Like it needs to keep you away from real people. It needs to keep you in air conditioning. It needs to keep you in climate controlled circumstances that allow you to not have any like temperature fluxes to where it would be obvious that it's present. It's gonna keep you in like a job that it doesn't challenge you, but it's comfortable. It's gonna keep you in all these things that keep you like sedated. A parasite can only really exist in like sedation, euphoria, and trauma. If there, you know what I mean? Like if you have like a even keeled, like a calm, your nervous system is calm. The parasite it'll be obvious when they are, coming up to the surface to try to manipulate your activity. So, most people just they live their whole life with a damaged nervous system, whether it be from like birth trauma throwing off their nervous system or the food. It's like birth trauma, getting the jabs, then the food, and then, maybe religious trauma, and then school itself. For a lot of people is trauma, and
Yeah.
then their relationships, and then they get right into bad habits that like keep them in like chasing the dopamine rush and the whatever the chemical they want, whatever that makes them release. So they stay in that euphoric state, that constantly chasing state, and the parasite can thrive in that. So, it's a lot of people that have comforts, creature comforts around them. They might have a lot of luxuries, but this is pretty much like everything the parasite needs to survive. So people are like, man, why are people so greedy that have wealth or have a lot of things? But it's like the parasite constantly needs more.
Right.
So it's going to be, it doesn't make sense to anybody else that it may be less parasitic, but the parasite itself is like, I just want to survive 24/7. All I'm thinking about is survival, and propagating myself for infinity. So it's not even really thinking like along the lines of like, it's not, I feel like people don't even understand how under attack they are. I mean, that shit is constantly in survival mode. Whereas like people, they don't take their life really serious. They're really in cycles of comfort. So they don't know they're up against something that is like almost like a cornered animal. Like every moment it's like, I gotta make you do this. I have
Well,
to. In order for me to survive, I
they don't
have
even
to.
know it's there. Like, so I was like reading, like when people, it's like, okay, how do you know if you have parasites? Pretty much everyone has them, right? But if you want to find out if you have parasites, you get a test. But apparently, you can't even detect them in tests because they're so intelligent. They hide in the tissues. Like, this is what I want to like communicate to people is like it's a very insidious intelligent consciousness. And like if you ever think about a mosquito, like the mosquito, like it'll come into the room and it'll be dormant, it'll just chill and then it'll wait till you're not paying attention to like, so like they hide, like their whole way of operating is hiding. Like so people don't even know, like they're not aware that that's not them. And so I think everything you're saying is like it's it's like the parasites have to keep someone at a vibration at in a like an acidic state of thinking and feeling and behaving, so that they remain in that low mood that further feeds the parasites, right? Like if you're, it's pretty messed up. So like these parasites could keep you consciousness wise like in a shitty job or in like a bad relationship or something, so that you don't feel good, so that you reach for the starchy comfort foods, so that you reach for the alcohol, so that you know, whatever hybridized weed, like whatever's going to keep you in that sedation, that you stay stagnant and you stay feeding yourself like acidic foods.
I mean, you think about it, man. People get really zoomed into attachments, man. Like, you see it all the time when people, the things that they feel like they need, whether it's Diet Coke or whether they feel like they just need to have certain things, like creature comforts around them, like that. You're detached from that attachment. So you looking at it like, man, you do not need this to survive, but they're in that. Like they're so fixated on that. And that is the parasite. Like, it is constant. Like it is driving you, from that mode of a survival mode. Like it's not. That's what I feel like the sense of urgency that the parasite has is is stronger than the people's sense of urgency to
Yeah,
remain
literally they
healthy.
make you rush. Like the biggest thing you notice with the diet change is like that urgency goes away, right? Because they like, it's like you gotta hurry. People are always in a hurry, like it's panic and fear, like more and more and more.
Yeah, not and that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Like it's a lot of things that there's so many things that they have to let go. There's like thoughts that they have to stop identifying with, the way they structure their sentences. There's so many things they got to let go. They might have to change their name. It's so many things for a lot of people that they have to do to create some contrast to be able to identify that enemy within, because the parasite is taking no moments off. It's like always there, always your adversary, kind of like, and you always got a microbial flow of, you know, parasites or whatever microbes, but it's just like you don't want to have like fully formed adult parasites. Like that is essentially like fully formed thoughts that are like tacit beliefs that are just ingrained in your outlook on life that you don't even really analyze them. That's just like assumed. Like you just assume that this is what life is. It's like built into your view on life. And the only way to really get rid of the parasite is to analyze the origin of your thoughts and to restructure the way, your identification system. And most people will not do it. You know what I mean? Like I think when you get to that point of like really going the length of fasting and really cleansing, like making it your lifestyle, because the parasite go dormant when you fast, and just wait for you to relapse and then try to get you to binge. And even on a raw diet, because I mean you can get a parasite from anything, and it's just like Inception. Like you touch a doorknob, you shake the wrong person's hand, you don't wash, you know what I mean, you don't wash your hands before you eat or something, because there's no respect there. For some reason, the parasite is just going to capitalize on all that disrespect. And so people like I feel like most people will never go the distance or go the lengths
But
that it
like if
takes. So
you can have gratification, like what that's what I'm wondering. Like why would people even want to exchange it, other than it's fake happiness and it's not sustainable? But the majority of people, like, I don't think they can see what they're giving up.
yeah, if they knew, they wouldn't give it up. And the parasite just counts on that. Their consciousness never leaves a certain area. Like they never inhabit certain areas of themselves, and their blood doesn't really fully circulate. So it's like even if they have a dream, they having dreams of the shit that they think about while they're awake. So they don't even get to experience something, beyond this experience. So most people are really in a cell, in a sense, like a inside their
How
body.
do you see it playing out, since it's very like insidious and it kind of like undercover, like the ways it affects people. How do you see that it affects people when it comes to like relationships and like love and bonding and connecting?
Man, I mean, like I was saying, the parasite's going to capitalize on all disrespect, and people are not doing their due diligence as far as like really investigate themselves. The origin of all the concepts that they hold on to, they hold attachments to. People are not really doing their own homework for their ancestry, all of that stuff. The parasite is going to use against you. It's like because you're not using that, you're not activating that within you. Whatever you leave dormant within you, whatever you turn a blind eye to and remain unaware of. You people have a body for 70 years and don't know how it works. But if you know how your body works, you know exactly what it's doing when you put certain substances on in there, and the alchemy or the transfiguration. Like that if I eat this, my body's gonna release this enzyme and do this, and then that's just like paramount to balancing yourself and realizing who you are, and then then you can kind of navigate in the world and you can see like other people that are actually doing the same, and then you have a chance at actually experiencing creation, you know, through a relationship, and I don't think people respect the process enough. I think
Like
a lot of people are
being a
just,
partner more mindfully, right? Like you're like looking at like if you didn't have that urgency of the parasitic driven behavior where you felt like empty or you needed to take, like maybe there would be more discernment, and then there would be less drama and negative emotional states because you people would be picking people who they resonated with, or like it would come from more alignment, right?
yeah, like you said, the taking concept. Like people are quick to say like, oh, I'm sick. What do I take for that? They're not like, oh, I need to fast. I need to not. I need to stop
Right.
taking and get into the other side. To giving. Being more selfless and giving myself some time to regenerate so that I could be helpful to other people and get on that side of life of giving instead of taking. But most people that want to go vegan and stuff, I feel like they'd be like, yeah, so what do I take to stop smoking? What do I take to heal this? Or what do I take to be able to have better sex or whatever? And it's like, man,
Like
you
like
want
something
to,
to feed the ego, essentially.
yeah, it's like a totally different approach to life to want to take things instead of giving things.
Right. And if you when you're fully satiated and you have real nutrition, then you don't have that taking mentality. You feel more full and giving and like overflowing. But
Yeah, no, exactly like you
love
said.
versus parasites, like the dichotomy.
Yeah, and it's got to be complete. You can't have somebody loving you for, a few things. They got to really accept the whole you. You know what I mean? And that's, I think a lot of people will like sacrifice areas of themselves, and they feel like they have to sacrifice. Where it's like, that's I don't feel like that's necessary. Love, I feel like love is not a sacrifice. Like, a compromise is really supposed to be a mutual gain. So it doesn't really make sense to sacrifice. I don't know if you heard me.
Yeah, you said love is not a sacrifice. Well, if it's giving,
Yeah.
or it's like inspired giving, right?
Yeah, I mean it's supposed to be a mutual growth instead
Yeah.
of
Right.
like
Guys, the
reducing.
other party is like taking something, right? Like you're giving something you don't want to, because the other person's taking something.
Yeah, somebody's like, oh well, I'm not assertive, so I'm gonna be with someone that's assertive, and they just get into codependency.
Exactly, which is like 99% of relationships.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why the parasite has a huge nesting ground right now.
Yeah. What do you feel about human consciousness? So some people would say that the phenomena of narcissism, which is very like widespread, is a form of like personified parasites. Like narcissists are basically humans who feed on that the consciousness and the energy of other people. Um, However, they are catalysts for growth. So would you say maybe the parasite does have a purpose? Like, not that it's a benevolent thing, but because, we live in a world of duality and the truth is non-duality, is it possible like parasitic beings and people are playing this role of like contrast so that you eventually have to go within yourself?
I mean, yeah, the parasite. I mean, it has a divine role as like a garbage man. You know, just cleaning up whatever is not being itself. It's
Right.
there to destroy it.
Because it can
It's a
eat
perfect
this
servant.
stuff, right? It can only eat the garbage.
What's that?
It can't
Yeah, it can.
eat good stuff.
Yeah, you got to already be attacking yourself to be attacked by a parasite.
Right.
You know, there's no way. That's the only way you can open yourself up is like through some sort of self-destruction. You know, so it's just there. It's like autocorrect. You know what I mean? And it's like so many people giving it power. So it's like, hey, this is what I'm supposed to do. Like, you know, they don't govern themselves. So the government, I form a government. This is just, I'm here. Yeah, like you could say it's a catalyst because then now people eventually be like, oh man, fuck the government. And it's like, yeah, but like collectively we created this by like forfeiting our own personal government.
Right. Have you noticed like the more, so I really believe it's like as within, so without. And I think if anyone who's listening, like if they're attracting parasitic beings, then it is a reflection of what's going on internally. Like, have you noticed at all, like the more you elevate your diet, like do you attract less parasitic people, or do you notice like more symbiotic relationships, or what has been your experience?
Well, yeah, like I feel like when you go through the process of getting rid of parasites, like you're gonna have some sort of temperature fluctuation, some sort of like fever pitch in your life. Things really start to fluctuate, you know, because as soon as your body recognizes a parasite, it goes into a fever mode and starts to burn things off. You know, it starts to get because the parasite is living in all the mucoid plaque and the dead cells. It feeds off of that. So once you identify some line of thinking that isn't yours, or you really feel a presence of like pinworms or something in your system, your body now is now aware of it. So now it's immediately going to go into uh, trying to find a new new homeostasis, a new sense of balance. And that process is always which is heating up to burn things off to make it more obvious. It's like napalming to figure out like where is this parasite at? Like we need to get to the root of this to get this out. And so people have to go through a bunch of series of that. You know, they're gonna have those symptoms, those detox symptoms where their temperature's fluctuating, they feel like shit. It's really subtle, you know. A lot of people they don't realize it and they just think like, oh, I'm angry or I'm sad or whatever, you know, I'm frustrated or I'm lethargic. But it's like, no, you're going through some sort of temperature fluctuation that if you just stick it out, you'll recalibrate and level out, and then you'll take back more territory of your own body, and then the more you do that, go through those phases, it just becomes more obvious of like the nature of what a parasite is and what a parasite isn't. And then I feel like you start to see it in the world, like, who's a parasite and who's not. And there's not many people that are really truly themselves. But at the same time, it's, it's like a less is more thing. So I think the more clarity, the more you can see who's who. And then, you kind of collectivize.
And that's why I'm really happy we're hosting the 21-day Parasite Cleanse, because I think it's super helpful to have like a reflection. Like, props to you for going through all that by yourself, but like it's so helpful to have like someone reminding you, because I feel like while you're detoxing, there's like these intelligent creatures that want to like constantly pull you back, and they're like, oh no, you're crazy. Oh no, everyone else is eating this. Don't be, you know. That's why I have so much respect for you that like you just did this all on your own, kind of like. And it's like it's
I mean,
you were like early,
they're,
you're like a pioneer in this.
they're all gonna go through it though, like because you can't fast for them, you can't breathe for them. So like they're gonna go through this 21-day
Right.
phase, and it's gonna set them up. It's gonna set them up for success, but they're gonna
Yeah,
have to go through their own journey.
of course you're gonna have
You
to fight
know,
your own battles, but it's just like a support and kind of reminder of like you're not crazy, like.
yeah,
And also like,
yeah. No, it's,
purpose, like there's so much joy from like I've only been like a few days now, like a week now into this, and like every day is like a win. Like I'm like, ah, like there's like it's like there's like peaks and valleys, but it's like every hurdle, it's like, oh, like things that used to bother you and pick at you, you know, like people that just irk you, it's just it just passes through. You become like neutral, right? Like the acidic state is like reactive, it's angry, fearful, whatever, and then you alkalinize, and then you're like neutral, like the yogis, like like it's not personal, like you just like it's so peaceful.
yeah. No, I mean, I think that you just really stop forcing.
Yeah. And do you think it has a big influence on like your abundance? Like, did you notice? Because I feel like if you're eating like food that's forced and fake, then the way you earn a living is like more forced and like fragmented, or like it feels like when you're eating more like in alignment, then things just like flow to you. Like, have you noticed that? Like things like without you asking, kind of things just come your way.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of like what I was saying about like this like guideline or that wall from Sevi in a sense, like where I was doing different things, reaching different phases, and like I saw my life open up and different opportunities, like finding means to or realizing means to like not have to rely on the system. I was a scholarship athlete, and I was like, man, I really don't want to do this no more. I really don't want to give up my body for this, and I feel like I don't really want to study a playbook anymore. I'd rather study my body, biology, biochemistry, and stuff. So, going into that, like shifting my focus into that, it brought me into connections with people to where I can make my own money. And then as I created more time and space to study myself, I just kept enhancing my, I guess, ability to see life for what it was, so I could see the opportunities. Like I get deeper into the raw veganism and stretching every day and all that stuff, right? And studying biochemistry, and then it just brought me to the breath. Actually doing breath work, and then as soon as I did that, like I felt like my uh, overhead and like my attachments got significantly reduced to where I was I felt like I was like, all right, well now I can travel the world. I really don't need anything, and so I could. It gave me right at the same time as really getting into the breathing. A lot of money was coming in, and I was just feeling like really empowered. Like, man, I could just keep traveling. I might not never have to stop traveling, and I probably could have just kept doing that, but um, everything kind of hit at one time. It's wild. Like, as soon as I got into the veganism, it gave me like a vehicle to get money, and then I bought some land, and then that just gave me a lot of time to study. And then I got into the breath, and then not having any overhead because I bought the land. I didn't have to pay like a mortgage or rent or anything. So now I'm just like I have like very little overhead, and money's just coming in, and I don't need much. So now I'm just like, let me just travel, let me see the world, and I'm meeting different people in that process. And I feel like it just really made it obvious, like making the connections in life, really realizing what's what and who's who, and how to take advantage of what's available, and not really let things slip. Because you're just present. I think it's just really being present. I think you're just less present when you have dead foods and your circulation is poor, your breath is shallow.
Right. It all leads back to the breath. Like everything you're eating is affecting the fluidity of your breath, the way you inhale, the way you exhale. So the more
Yeah.
complete your breath, like talking about completion, so the more the complete your authentic breath became, the more alignment you experienced, like everything was in alignment.
Yeah. And I felt like the more that I wasn't just, taxing my system and having all of that food on blocking my diaphragm from expanding, and because I was just gradually fasting, stretching more, I didn't really realize, like, because I was like, I was playing sports all my life, and we would stretch before practice and before games, and we would stretch here and there, to be ready for events and stuff. But it was never like, this is what I need for sanity and clarity to experience my consciousness better. And once I started to like do it for that, it was just a totally different experience. Like, and I feel like circulation is really key, and food that is not um, communicating with you correctly, it just inhibits the circulation, and then you just don't think right, and you make bad decisions, and you don't have the clarity to live the life that you're supposed to be living.
What do you think's like the likelihood, or what do you feel intuitively is the likelihood that people will begin to like take this more seriously or like want to actually change and purge these parasites? Like, do you see it happening, or do you think people are gonna remain in the sleep mode?
I don't think we're going to get a critical mass, but I think like it's a less is more thing. Like, it's almost like I always make the analogy like you got an apple tree, it drops a lot of apples, but most of those apples never become trees, But it's not like they're useless. They become compost, they become fertilizer for the ones that do become trees, the seeds that do make it. And I feel like that's kind of what the same situation with people is. Like, there's going to be a select few of people that will apply their will, and everybody. I really do feel like everybody has this same life, kind of relative to them. Their own gifts and their own nest that they came through their bloodline. They got different, uh, you challenges and different advantages, I guess you could say. And you reach different points. Like I said, I I got into changing my lifestyle, and then I came into a big pocket of money, and then I had to parlay that into experiences so that I could turn that into like a more sustainable life, like vehicle of income that didn't. Because there's a funny balance. Like you definitely want to, you have as much money coming in as you can, but at the same time, not not the kind of money that brings relationships that are gonna draw on your attention to where your consciousness is focused on things that are distracting you from like real learning. So, I think a lot of people they might have cushy jobs and stuff, or whatever. They might be really broke, and they don't think that they have the ability to see life differently. But there's probably some type of family connection that you have, or friendship connections that you have, that are going to allow you to create a life, like a vehicle, to where you can come into like a pocket of money or a pocket of resources to where you can carve out a life for yourself. But for the most part, like if people are, in their attachment, they they're not going to see those opportunities. So, the ones that do, I feel like it's going to be such a sharp contrast, especially as the days go on, that they're not going to see it as like it's going to be life and death to them in a sense. Like, it might
What
not be actually life and death, but
attachments are you talking about? That people, if people are too much in their attachment?
yeah, I think people are really attached. Whether they're attached to limiting concepts, or they're attached to certain comforts, they're attached to other people, like being there for them and being their strengths for
Oh,
them.
that's
Like, yeah, like people have it's a wide range of things that people are attached to, and like if they was to empower themselves and really study themselves and see how strong they really are and could be, then I think they'll see these opportunities, and the ones that do, I feel like it's not like you have a choice anymore. Like you just end up doing what you can't not do. It's just like, oh man, there's no way that I can eat this. There's no way that I can do this. There's no way that I can have sex with this person. There's no way that I could go to this place because I'm already past that experience. Like I don't I don't want to get away from myself. Like you said, like people if they knew what they were giving up, they wouldn't want to give it up. But like giving up yourself is like giving up your ticket to eternity. It's like you could be yourself and then you have autonomy
Like you could be
and
a
you
god.
experience yourself. You experience the likeness of the creator. You have oneness with the creator, and so then like you have autonomy. You can experience yourself for eternity. Whereas like people they really like to believe their own lies that these external things are their way to experience themselves.
Right. So one mantra I've been like using for myself is like nothing tastes as good as freedom feels. Because like the food, it'll taste good for a while, it'll be like comforting, whatever. But it's not as good as that true freedom that is like on the other side of those attachments.
Yeah, yeah. There was that one quote, right? That's like nothing tastes as good as shitting feels.
I don't know that one, but
But you know what I'm saying? Like getting
right.
something out does not
Yeah,
taste better. You know what I mean? And I feel like it reigns true in like all other areas of life. Like you have a physical bowel movement, then you could also have like an emotional bowel movement and societal bowel movement where you're like purging these emotions, releasing them, and then releasing yourself from attachments to
yeah.
people, certain people.
I mean, that's enough in itself. Like, look how many people, I know so many, I'm sure you do too, how many people are always complaining about parasitic people and the drama and like, oh, they're doing this and like
Yeah,
purging that in itself is freedom.
yeah. I mean, it's like it's like two ways of looking at life. Is like, man, I need this, I need that, I need that, or it's like, how much do I not need, and really analyzing life, like, what don't I need? And once you figure out, like, oh, I don't need meat. Oh, what else don't I need? What else don't I need? And like, the more that you don't need, the more that you end up having. More you experience.
I want to ask one more question and then maybe we'll open it up to the viewer questions. Um, do you feel there's a difference, or do you think there's something that the parasites do when it comes to lust and like the body? Like if you think about kind of like the type of bodies that we're attracted to, is like, the voluptuousness and like the fat and the curviness, right? There's like something that has like the sex appeal, but I think that generally comes from more acidic food or more density. And then, do you think there's something going on there with that, like with the body and with like hormonal type of changes? And like, how would that change? Like, do you think eating healthy just creates a more like neutral sexuality? Like, what do you think about that?
I think that recognition of like um, wider hips is just innately wired in men, because that just more, is like a more suitable mate in that respect. And you know, as far as breast is concerned, I feel like people look at it like, okay, this is somebody that can produce even more milk for the child. Like I feel like that's like just subconsciously deeply wired in the biology of
Can you have
people.
that with healthy food, do you think? Or do you think it like is driven by the fat and stuff?
I think that like when it comes to like breasts, I feel like people should more so look at like how they're gonna expand during pregnancy instead of them already being expanded, like if they're not in good shape, if the person is not in good shape, the person is not they're not so they're not tight, you know what I mean? I feel like then there's gonna be even worse of a situation post pregnancy. Like their body's gonna be even more broken down if their physique isn't you, firm. There gotta be some level of firmness. Like I'm not saying like you gotta be like a man, but like I'm just saying like there should be some level of firmness there to where, you know, you could go through pregnancies and not fall apart. And I feel like people that want breasts that are already really expanded, they just don't have foresight. I feel like there's a certain level, I guess we could go into cup size, which cup size is too far, I don't know, but I feel like there's a certain point where you're like, man, if this woman, if these breasts are so large that if she has a child and then she goes through nursing, they're never coming back, you know. Whereas like somebody might have smaller breasts, but they're in better shape, and then she goes through nursing, and then it snaps back because she's just more firm. But like hips, I feel like hips in general, like that's a melanin thing. You know what I mean? Like, and whether you have um, pheomelanin or eumelanin, you know, the internal melanin is going to determine more so like your bone structure and your hips and stuff. So people, they got pheomelanin or eumelanin in their skin. Somebody might have more pale or dark skin, but you see pale people with wider hips still, and dark people might have more slim hips. But different internal melanin makeup is gonna bring about a wider hip, generally
So
speaking.
do you
And I feel like,
all
yeah,
reproductive? Like, because that's what I'm trying to decipher is like, is it all, are you sure it's all just fertility value? Because I know there's truth in the fertility, wide hips and the breast and whatever, like good for a child. But what about people who are, they fetishize more like thick or fat, or like there's people who really are drawn to more of that kind of fleshy type of body, and then there's people who are like, no, 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 I only want skinny. Like, I was just curious on your thoughts of like, do you think it's all natural, the attraction, or do you think the parasites have an influence when it comes to the type? Because you know how we said they influence behavior. I feel there may be some type of influence where they could be more attracted to like more fertile breeding grounds. You know what I mean?
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, definitely. I mean, if the parasite is gonna definitely try to synchronize you with your worst reflection that it can possibly get you with. So for sure, I mean, if somebody's not really fully inhabiting their body, then they're gonna be more flabby. You know, it's a balance of suppleness and firmness that I think you have to have the eye for, and I think that eye just comes the more that you take care of your own body, and then you can kind of see like who's really respecting their body. Like people that have that awareness to where they still um, they're only consuming healthy fats. They're only working out, enough to where they don't have so much emphasis on the flesh, where they're just having a good workout. They cycle their blood into their tissue, and they exercise that area of them, and keep it healthy. And I think that that respect for that area of you will just make you recognize it in other people. And as far as breeding goes, and then I think it even goes beyond that. You know what I mean? Like with genetic matches, like the parasite wants the most recessive traits to come together, because then it's easier for them to dominate the offspring. So like, for sure, people be attracted to things that, or they
That's
think they're attracted, but yeah. I mean, the parasite is really doing the attracting,
that's what I'm
you
talking
know?
about. That's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
that's their genes. Like they could literally make you crave, you know, because in a sense, beauty is a reflection of health. Like there's a balance. Like you don't want to be vain, and you don't want to be too lusty because that's also parasitic, is you're just thinking about how to take energy. Um, but there's a certain like discernment that comes with reading health, and that's just so crazy to me that like someone could choose, like an unfit mate because of parasite hacking.
Yeah, they could just be deep, man. Like you see it all the time. Like you see, I don't know. I think it's more in women than men because it's not. I don't
Your
know.
mentality.
I see a lot of women that are vegans or vegan leaning, and then they're with non-vegans, and I'm just like, man, you're just tossing all of that progress out the window. It nullifies it all. So like, I feel like that's why you don't really want to get caught up in the mechanical end of cleansing. It really is a complete overhaul of your life to where that you can be in alignment. Creation is alignment. You should be doing everything you can to foster creation. Everything in your life should be in respect to creation. Like, how can I support creation, creativity, rather than, destruction, fragmentation, distraction, and all of that, and just sedation, you know, fleeting satisfaction. Going away from that and more into just like every moment of every day, I'm doing everything I can to prepare myself for creation and to be supportive of creation all around me and inside myself. I think that's a totally different outlook on life. That you know, if you're vegan and you have an outlook like, oh, I just want to take from the world, or I want to get things from the world, you know, um, or yeah, if you're vain, it nullifies all that. You got the best diet in the world, all it just get nullified because that's just mechanical. It's not really of any real substance. Like, you can cleanse, but if you haven't changed your thinking and your breathing and your approach to society, if you haven't changed that, then you're just gonna keep cleansing. You're just gonna keep spinning your wheels,
But
cleansing,
are you
and never really.
say earlier like you're kind of forced to match the consciousness when you cleanse?
Yeah, like if you really wanna make it your lifestyle,
Oh,
because
so
you
you're
could
talking about
fast.
like the detox retox cycle. You're saying like you gotta cleanse like for good, like alignment.
Yeah, that should be the mode instead of people like, I want to cleanse so that I can regenerate enough to keep hurting myself. I think that's most people.
Right.
You know.
And it's actually interesting, like the duality. I was thinking about like I don't think it's actually enough to say vegan because there's a lot of unhealthy vegans. I would say like true true mineral balance, true eater, like true human food, like you say, or like so there's got to be an evolved word because vegan is not encompassing of it. It's kind of like the real human food. We can say that. It's so
Yeah.
interesting because like the duality of it, and I was curious what you thought too. Like, but I see it as like the acid is destruction and the alkaline's creation. So like the disease and everything can only be in acid, and acid's like the void. It literally goes into the void, right? It eats bone or it eats whatever. It goes into the void, and then the alkaline is like the plants, like the growth. So I think it's just like very interesting. Like there's like the death and then the creation duality. And
I
maybe
mean,
do you think
there's a,
it's feminine masculine? Like would the acid be feminine and the alkaline masculine? I'm just stretching. I like to play with duality, as you know.
I mean, like you said, like I mean, like alkaline. It, if you go too alkaline, then it's bleach, and it's just as destructive as.
Oh, that's
As you put it. So it really is a balance of the two, man. I mean, if you're overly alkaline, you're gonna, even if it's just fruits, you know what I mean? Like if you're just overly alkaline, you're just gonna have a lot of fungal situations. You look at like an alkaline environment, it still would be like uh, a rock that's underneath of the side of a tree or something that is a bunch of moisture there, and the moss and the fungus and everything grows on that. That's alkaline still. You know what I mean? But that's like the more extreme end of it. You know, if you go even further, then yeah, just a bleach. Everything bleach kills everything. So like, you know, that's totally alkaline. You know what I mean? If you're looking at the pH scale, bleach is high alkaline. And
High
then
alkaline these too, right?
what's
Like
up?
they say high alkaline can foster disease as well, like too alkaline.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like it, that's what attracts. Like that's more fungus. You feed the fungus and the thrush if you're just overly alkaline and overly like in traditional Chinese medicine, they would just call that like being overly moist. That you're too wet. The diet is too wet at that point. There's not enough fire. So you know you it's like a slow creeping, like a fungal type parasite. Whereas like yeah, like acid, the parasites in acid will be like your worms and flukes and stuff.
Okay. But it's not, so it's not like acidic takes away. I guess they both could, any extreme. Because bleach would annihilate and
Yeah, I mean if you go if you go all the way down to acid
like
side, you're gonna
like
get into
oxidation,
you get
like the eating, like you know, acid kind of like eats away at stuff like it. So it's all about balance.
yeah, like if something is overly alkaline, the fungus is gonna come and eat away. And if something is really acidic, like cyanide, you know what I mean? Just destroy stuff.
So then they don't talk about having a body that's too alkaline.
Who's that?
Like I'm saying, because with the Sabi method, it's about eating alkaline, having an alkaline body.
Yeah, no, that's why I feel like when I got exposed to Dr. Africa, it was more of a holistic view where he's like, he goes into the pH scale and like, the pH of your urine and the pH of your saliva is supposed to be slightly acidic and different, just different like outlooks on it to where you incorporate the whole pH scale because if you go too far in either direction, you got annihilation.
Right. But I think Sabi just focused on the alkaline because most people are too acid at this point.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like, and I think most people just don't like if it's just you just want it to be slightly alkaline, like 7.1, 7.2, 7, maybe 7.4. But like the body as a whole is like 7.2 if you like adding it all up, all the different all the different areas together. It's like 7.2. So it's a ratio of acid and alkaline and it's, most people will be eating if they're eating a sad diet, then yeah, they're probably just having way too many acids.
Right. So reminder, we're doing the 21-day Parasite Cleanse on September 29th, if this information is resonating with you. And we're going to open up for questions for you guys who've been listening along this whole while. So,
Okay.
oh yeah, and on the cleanse, we're also going to be integrating with breath work, meditation, and giving you like a menu of a lot of research of what's still real enough out there to eat, and kind of guiding you through the stages of like how you can start and level up.
Yeah, so I don't know. Can you read the message? I mean, the questions, or do you want me to read them out loud?
I see the people joining. Do you see
I
them?
can I can read the
Oh
questions
yes,
if you would, maybe.
my comments are off. Let me see if I can turn them on.
But if you go to
Wait. Oh, I see them. Yeah, yeah. There's like a list under questions. How do we position
yeah,
ourselves and our people? All right. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to just go down the list or?
yep, we can just go right
All
on
right.
down the list.
So how do we
So
position ourselves around real people?
you want to go first, and then I'll go. All right.
I think it's as within, so without. I think it's like a quote you said that I like, trying is dying. you don't have to, like, when you're in alignment, you don't have to try. Like, it's more about, it's not about, again, like what we were mentioning, what you can get or how to take or bring that energy. It's what like the Tao Te Ching is like what you can give up, what you can get out of the way. So I think the more you purify, the more you cleanse your consciousness, the more you just vibrate with it, and it's just like magnetic. That's why I love talking about magnetism. It's like there's no effort, it's just magnetism. What do you think?
Yeah, I think like with every culture, like if there is parasites, then they must be feeding off of something. So there has to be some level of reality there, you know, for the parasite to even be able to have a host. So whatever culture you're in, if you're in, South Dakota, Florida, Miami, another country, whatever it is, there's going to be some sort of reality, some sort of vestige of creativity. And I feel like you can see the creator in anybody or whatever, and connect with that part of them. But if you really want to connect with someone that's real, it's going to be somebody that's in the process of creation. You know what I mean? Different people that are in that process, people that are constantly putting themselves, making themselves vulnerable to where they're in a good way, to where they can connect with themselves and create. And so, whatever it is, whatever culture you in, man, I feel like even if you're a fucking trucker or something, there's gonna be somebody in that culture that is the realist. It might not be the realest person on earth, but there's somebody that is the realist in that culture. And if you're real you, then you guys will connect on the premise of reality, and then you can grow from that foundation and just work with what you got, instead of like expecting people to already be where you want to be.
I like that. All right, next question. Are there spectrum of acid to alkaline worms? I think we kind of touched on that, right? Like the different, isn't there like different
Yeah,
like eukaryotes and the, I don't, are you good with the science?
yeah. No, I mean, I guess the worst situations would be like full blown tapeworm.
Element
You have to have a really really acidic environment for that. But worms are more of an acid environment
or
thing,
something? Like
huh?
eating uncooked pork and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, but like it's like that's what I was saying about the thought. Like there might have been something that was that penetrated you real early, maybe before you even start developing language, or in the womb, or maybe even pre-womb if you want to go that far. But a, a tapeworm is really a representation of a deeply embedded thought
Wow.
that has totally controlled your outlook on life, and it now physically manifests as a tapeworm, as this huge tapeworm.
Like thought
So
really, like what do you think it could be? Like a thought related to like unworthiness or like
yeah, some
or
some
any
kind of limitation.
toxic looping thought.
Yeah, some kind of limitation, or like you were saying, kind of like some kind of narcissism. But narcissism's always like really rooted in like overcompensation because you feel limited,
Yeah. Yeah.
or you're just really just a parasite, and you're a parasite, and you're just uh inorganic portal that's just there to consume as much as you can while you have a body. Like some people are in that space.
Yeah, well, narcissism's a spectrum, but I do think that, you know how you say like some people are like personified parasites? I do think that like full-blown narcissists are just the body is here just to play the role of the parasitic entity that just kind of helps you evolve and eats your garbage up.
Yeah, it's really just a portal that is like a dead end. It just there's this movie called The Endless, right, where like people constantly reincarnate and have the same day over and over again, and it's kind of like what what a parasite is like when it becomes fully personified. It's like it's a being that will never reach a certain level of growth. It's going to constantly stay in a certain space and constantly just endlessly reincarnate and be in that spot. It's like pretty much like if you come down
And
here to where I'm at, I'm going to eat you. It's your
yeah,
fault.
people must be wondering, right? I heard different perspectives about like what happens because we all have opportunity for the soul to evolve, to not incarnate. And people are wondering, like, well, what happens to narcissists? Like they're not conscious at all. They don't have that process. And then I heard some perspectives that the soul just keeps reincarnating and then it gets recycled. Like it just goes back into the void.
It's like really no soul there. You know what I mean? Like it's just a body with no soul. It's like an open
Yeah.
portal that doesn't have all the levels. Like a soul can, go through its life, progress, grow, unify with another soul, and then they move on to another experience. Whereas like a soulless vessel, the way I explain it is like, all right, so like reality or whatever, or heaven or whatever you want to call it, like a more real reality exists, and then you have if you fall asleep in that reality, you wake up in a dream, and the parasite is a projection in that dream. They only exist in that dream. It's like a video game character that only exists on one level, and like it doesn't have an existence outside of it. It's not built for that. It doesn't have those components to to calibrate, yeah, to be in
You don't
another
think they
level.
could transcend other realms, like the dream realms? They're only in one time space thing, coordinate.
Yeah, the only way that I feel like they have any access to dreams is if somebody decides to synchronize with them and bind their soul to them, which I think plenty of people have. You know what I mean? Like, kind of like in the Matrix, man. I don't know if a lot of people seen that, series, but that one point, Agent Smith, he ends up because they get jacked into the Matrix. They go into the Matrix, and then Agent Smith can hijack them once they come into the Matrix and use them as a portal to come into the real world. Like in the first one, the guy tries to kill Neo, the guy that eats the steak. I don't know if everybody knows. You know what I mean? The one dude that's like, you know what I mean? Or the one dude's like, man, why would I hurt myself unless I wasn't myself? And it's because like Agent Smith took over his body, which was in reality. It
Agent
wasn't in the Matrix.
Parasite? It is, right?
Huh?
Itself?
Huh?
Agent Smith's kind of like the parasite that clones itself.
Yeah, like it needs you as a soul to bind with it so that it can perpetuate itself because it can't exist on its own. It needs a host, so it needs like every century or two, it needs like a soul to come in so that it can latch onto it and ride out that wave, that bloodline for like 200 years. It's gonna break down the bloodline, and then that host becomes like not really suitable anymore. So then they just latch onto another host and just keep the cycle going. And they're never gonna transcend. They just all they're doing is using that soul's ability to dream and experience itself as like a means or a platform to infect other people's dreams, to infect other people. Because that's really the basis of parasitism, is really like colonize the dreams so that the person cannot dream anything beyond what they are experiencing in this life. They're only experiencing memories from this life and this level of limitation. So, whatever a parallel life and all that, that's all just memories of the same life. So then now you're just dreaming of the same memories, and it's an endless feedback loop because your dreams are your memories. So now you have no means of creating new memories because the dreams are where creation is happening, and then this is reaction. Creation and reaction got the same letters. It's like the creation zone is dreams, and this is the reaction zone. So you create in the dreams, and this is like the residual experience from that. So beings that only exist in this like residual side reality, they just they can't create, so they have to infect your dreams and try to get you to only focus on these memories here, say dwelling on these memories, stay in your traumas,
Wow,
so that
that's
all you dream
cool.
of, all you're dreaming about is the same memories over and over
They
again.
lock your
And so
consciousness.
yeah, yeah, they can't, now you don't even have the ability to fathom creating a new memory or new dream. So you just continually perpetuate making the same. and now you're in a place where the parasite can reach you, and you stay being food. Like, if you plant a seed and you raise it and you eat the food.
But what about, so I do think sometimes people just throw out the word narcissism, and I think there's a difference. I think there's people who are like fully possessed, you could say, that their whole body is the parasite, the narcissistic consciousness. And then I think there's people, in all honesty, that they're on the spectrum, or they have narcissistic traits and they're not fully gone, but I feel that they could eventually incarnate as a full-blown parasitic narcissist consciousness. What do you think about that? Like the narcissistic versus narcissist parasite consciousness.
Yeah, it just like hurt people. Like it's like being bit by a vampire. You become a vampire. It's all learned behavior. Like there's pride somehow is like the impetus in a sense. Like pride is what begets all the other sins, like lust and all of that other stuff is just pride. So people, they feed into that, and that's what creates this separation within themselves, to where they start to identify with their desires instead of with their real identity. And through that separation process, they go through physical separation, where now they breed with people that aren't in, they don't reflect their true likeness. So now they're breeding with NPCs, and then they, generations of that, now they don't even recognize themselves. 4 or 5 generations down the line, they don't even, they're the core of their appearance, their likeness, physical and otherwise, is broken down so much they don't even recognize themselves. They don't really know themselves. So now this whole process is just like inducing like recessive genetics. You breaking down the dominant archetypal genetics over time, over generation and generation, to where you can create like a totally recessive type, and that just is like open vessel, which is soulless, which is a graft. It's an extension of a soul. It's so far away from the archetype that it's just a body with no soul at that point, and it has an opportunity to graft itself to its, what are you going to call, higher self or original self.
It's funny
It has that
graft.
opportunity.
It's
Huh?
funny you use that word graft, like the hybrids. Well, it's all parallel, right? Like it's like you keep
Yeah,
fragmentation in the food is like the hybridization and then genetic modified, and then it keeps hybridizing, it keeps fragmenting, and it gets away from the truth. And then the same thing is happening with the human, right? Like it keeps losing the memory of itself and getting away from truth and further fragmenting, as opposed to unifying and going back to the self through relationship as well, through true reflection.
yeah, yeah. It's just a human farming. You're breaking the seed down, because we're all just seeds. Everybody is a seed. So like you break the seed down. That's the template, to where that's the blueprint. So that's the plant. You can plant a cucumber seed in Africa or Mexico, whatever it is, where it's going to be a cucumber plant. But if you start to cross it with other things, then that core of his genetics starts to break down to where it's something all else. It becomes an abomination. It's not in the likeness of, it's not complete. Anything that's complete is in the likeness of creation and the creator. So the more incomplete something is, the more of an abomination it is, and the more it behaves, you know, irrespective to the true likeness of the creator. You know what I mean? Like you said, like a god. It's not operating like that no more. It's not operating with that responsibility. It's totally dependent. It's just like why cats are less dependent than dogs.
Wow,
Like cats are still, they're more
they're not as
genetically intact.
hybridized, right, as dogs.
Yeah, yeah, they're more themselves, so they don't need you as much. I mean, you can
All
make anything more
tied
dependent.
together, right? They like the parasitic consciousness hijacks the food supply and then hijacks the human supply and to create dependency so that it's master, right? The more dependent the humanity, the more sovereign it reigns, the more it gets to do what it wants.
Yeah, I mean, like it really starts very, very small, at the thought level. People identify with thoughts that are not in their likeness, and then they breed not in their likeness, and then they become farmed as human because their dreams become colonized. They no longer dream anymore. They're just in a perpetual loop of memory of the same memories, and so now they once you have the dreams, then you have the waking life. That's just gonna follow the dreams because it's the wake. You know what I mean? It's the wake. Like you have a boat that goes across the ocean, and then the wake is what's left behind. It's like the dream is like the boat. That's like the light. And then this is like the shadow or the wake or the reflection of the light. It's the dream from off of reality. And the more that you identify with this, because you're severed from eternity, you're severed from reality, really. So you live out a lifetime where you don't really foster that connection with eternity. Now you're lost. You're going to end up dying in a dream. So then you go further into a dream within a dream within a dream within a dream, and then it's just infinite subconscious at that point. The body is the subconscious. Every part of the body that you don't inhabit is the subconscious. If your body's fully inhabited, then it's conscious. But if you are a rogue body that's just driven off a sensual desire, like a free radical, like you are infinite. You just you're just a subconscious. You're just subconscious. You're gonna have kids. Your kids are gonna have kids. They're all gonna be in a loop. Like, and you get further from yourself. There's this movie called The Visitor, where the guy he has just enough, like he has just enough consciousness to realize he's in a loop, but not enough consciousness to break it. So like he doesn't realize like his wife is actually his sister, and then by the time he finds out, it's already too late. So then he has a kid, and the kid is actually him, because it's like a loop. It's an infinite loop. Like it's eating itself, like a snake eating its own tail. So he breeds with his sister. He has a kid. The kid is him, and then he has another kid, and that is his daughter, and the daughter is the reincarnation of the sister. And then they separate them at birth, and so that later on the sister and the brother meet, and they have a love, and they don't know what the love is because they don't really know themselves, and then they breed, and then the parasite just is basically just keeping that going, and that's pretty much where we at,
Right, if you can
like where people don't really,
trauma,
yeah,
like sexual trauma and like how these families and stuff, like it's like it's the reverse of evolution, right? Like it's like devolution. Like because okay, if you think of the hybrids and like when there's like the inbreeding thing, if there's things that are too similar, they're not it's not the right alchemy, then it creates like the acid, like the it's like a false binder, the starch, and it's acid, it's destruction. I think that's what happens when people have the like perverse type of sexuality or the like the kind of incestuous consciousness like that happens to
yeah,
people, which is probably
like it's gonna
right,
start off,
which is
what's up,
probably parasite driven.
yeah, like it's gonna start off with vanity, pride, and now I'm breathing with someone because of how they look and my sensuality, instead of like what is good for myself and what is good for the world as a whole, and what is like supporting creation as a whole, and having like a holistic perspective. I'm having a more isolated perspective. I just want to have a kid that has the type of physical traits that I either lack in myself or I find desirable. So now I'm having kids from straight vanity. That's the beginning of unconscious breeding, pride, prideful breeding. And then if you perpetuate that, you go down the line 10 generations of that, it's going to be a feedback loop. You're going to eventually breed with your cousin or your sister or somebody like that, because you're descending into unconsciousness, because you're breaking down the template, you're breaking down the likeness by operating from vanity instead of like the core, like the fruit being the value instead of the flower. Like now you have a, you have a kid with someone out of vanity, their whole upbringing is going to be affected by that. Their outlook on life is going to be affected by that. Their relationship with their mother is going to be affected by that. So that's going to affect their relationships that they forge, and then it's just going to perpetuate itself. Most people will never break it. Like you said, like you just breed because of some carnal stuff. It's going to be such a separation between you. It's going to be like a forced cross pollination to where there's such an open space for parasitic infestation that it's going to be really hard for them. There's not as much protection. Like,
And we
if you
hybridize plants for cosmetic purposes. It's all interconnected.
yeah, yeah, I mean, exactly. Selective breeding to make the honeydew look the same, smell the same, have the same texture every time. I want it to look like this. So, it's not a holistic approach, but it's really like you eroding the spiritual protection. Like people will
Yeah,
vanity breed.
that would be the parallel of the pest resistance. Like they want the plant to resist pests, to have like a thicker peel or whatever, like that, but that it erodes like the true spiritual resistance.
Yeah, like if you're breeding out of vanity, then now your child is created. Those were the ingredients that brought that body into existence was lust, insecurity. That like if you're like, okay, we're gonna put these ingredients in a pot and make a baby. That's what you're putting in the pot to make a baby. So this is what they're coming from, and they're gonna have a lot to undo to really dwell in reality. And it leaves them really open for attack. Like you said, like Sebi said, that you hybridize the plants, and now the bugs destroy the plants because they're not in harmony with nature. So the bugs just naturally coming here to clean this up. So then you have to spray the plants, and the bugs are like, all
So
right, well then you eat it then.
so the bugs are coming more to the hybridized plants, because I thought they hybridized them so that they don't get pests. Do you think it's worked in reverse? Like it's made the pests more resistant?
Well, like the reason that you need pesticides and herbicides and fungicides is because these plants are genetically broken down to where they don't have the defense mechanism. You're breeding them for the wrong reasons. You're breeding the corn so that they can be sweeter and be bigger and attack your eyes a certain way, instead of for it to bring you the nutrition and to bring that reality to you. And now you're mass producing it in a way that it wouldn't naturally grow, to where it's not in a balanced microbiome, to where it's vulnerable to bugs now. And now the bugs are just here like, okay, this is free game. We can destroy this. So then, the farmers are like, well, we got this infestation of bugs. We got to spray pesticides, herbicides, fungicides on this so that, we have a crop, because nature just will not allow us to do this.
Let's get to the next questions because we could go on forever.
Yeah.
Are you into making your own fruit green juices at home? If so, what's your favorite juice?
You want to go ahead?
I haven't gone that far yet. I've just been eating like whole stuff. You?
Yeah. I mean, though even though a lot of shit is hybrid, man, if you ask me just what my favorite juice is, man, I would like arugula, which is pretty much just domesticated dandelion. And if I can't get dandelion, I would get like arugula, celery, pineapple, cilantro, maybe kale. And then ginger. That'd be my favorite green juice.
So do you like try to avoid the hybrids, but like still take them?
I mean, at this point, I feel like I just know what to do to counter them. You
Right.
know what I mean? It's just that's really how I look at it. Like it's kind of
Alkalinize, unbalance. You rebalance it or something.
yeah. Like I'm just gonna take the herb to counter it. But like if I have dandelion greens and and ginger and pineapple or green apple, then that's fine too. But if you're saying like personal preference, that would be my favorite, like celery, cilantro, um, arugula or
You like
dandelion,
the
and kale with ginger.
do you like
You said what?
the
I like what?
bitter, like more bitter flavors?
Yeah, the bitter and the peppery with the acidic, with the pineapple or uh with the green apple. I mean, yeah, green apple or pineapple. Feel like they complement better. I don't really like green juices with alkaline fruits. It doesn't really the combination isn't really the best combination. Green juice by itself would be the ideal, like just cilantro juice or just dandelion. I mean, that would be ideal, but if we're just saying like preference, I'll say that.
So someone's asking if you ate sad. I don't know if that's an acronym for something or if he's just saying sad.
Yeah, yeah, standard American diet.
Oh, that's so. If you ate sad for 20 years, then start fasting and do multiple parasite detox cleanses, how many days would it take on average to expunge bulk parasites, would you say?
uh, 90 days. Oh man, it depends. It's a weight thing too, but 90 days should do you, man. Like Sebi was what 300 pounds, and he just had water and herbs for 90 days and got rid of
I'm,
the bulk of it.
90 days sounds about right. I think he talks about 90 days too, right? Like,
Yeah, he
hey, like
said he went to
it's
Mexico.
gotta be at least like this 20-day 21-day cleanse we're doing is just to like get people kicked off and hopefully they continue, but like I think you need at least 3 months to like really reboot the system, right?
Yeah,
Agreed.
yeah, for sure.
All right. Our world Our world operates on sodomy, so when people claim what they like, dislike, or have fetishes for, are we all just running a program that's infected by a virus? Getting into like the
I
all
mean,
perversion programs.
you could look at it like, yeah, you could look at it like your mouth is the top of your asshole, so all your oral fixations are related to the bottom end of the spectrum. It's not really separated. So, I get what he's saying, or she, whoever it was, I don't know, but I don't know. I'm not looking at him, but I feel like it definitely has an influence on everything people do, especially with texture. You know, is definitely playing a big role. Their their infestation on the lower end of the spectrum, but at the same time, as above, so below. Your brain and your gut is one.
I know, right? Isn't that so fascinating? They even look the same, the folds and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so someone's asking, so trauma bonding in relationships is just parasites attached to each other's energies. Um, yes, essentially, but I would say like the symbolism's different. I think the trauma is like the symptom. The attachment is the parasitism, but the trauma and the emotions are like the food that keeps the parasite going. So it's like the original trauma where the parasite like embedded itself. So say like you had like a childhood trauma of abandonment or something like that, and then that created a wound where you weren't present. So then you left a space and self medicated with potato chips or alcohol or hybridized weed or whatever. And then you kept feeding that loop, the karma, the cycle. And then you kept as within, so without. So then you attract the partners that abandon you or aren't present. And then it's a feedback loop. So you got to go into the original trauma, be present with it, which is why they say feel it to heal it, and then the parasite has no existence. It has no more emotional energy, physical energy parallel to feed on. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think it's like separate parasites. I don't think it's like two parasites trying to get together through you. It's one parasite using both of your bodies and feeding off of you.
Mm,
It's not. I mean, it's like, and it's a hierarchy of parasites or
where
whatever, or you
would
could
it be?
whatever.
What body or where?
You say where would it be located?
Do you think it's like a mutual affinity or how, like how
Yeah.
does it operate in one body? I was curious about that too, like reflecting on that. Is the parasite in one body magnetizing its food, or is it two? You're saying it's not two parallel parasites trying to breed, or I don't
I mean,
think
a lot. I'm saying generally speaking, it's one parasite just trying to keep its food
right.
on its plate.
Usually,
You know.
probably the narcissistic or the antagonist partner, right? The person who's
Yeah, just or somebody that's just like a enabler. You know, you both just like, yeah, let's have potato chips tonight, every night or whatever.
right.
You know, something but yeah, like I feel like a lot of attachment isn't necessarily. It's a direct reflection, but I think you gotta look at it more kaleidoscopic than that.
It's
Like sometimes,
duality, yeah. I think each person's parasite is doing what is drawing the behavior and the emotional energy.
yeah, like sometimes you you stay in synchrony like in synchronized with someone through attachment, and it's like they have one trauma or attachment they have or whatever, but it's just like you know when you judge someone and then you judge yourself for judging them, it's like a compounded attachment. You know what I mean? And I feel like you know they don't necessarily have the same traumas, but it is the same attachment in a different way. A lot of the times, like it's like the narcissistic empath relationship. They're both narcissists.
Yeah,
A lot of the time, they're both. It's just like
in court.
one, yeah, one is just like the kind of like victimized narcissist, and one is just like the other side of the spectrum. You know, they're like the villain. You know, victim and villain. There's like the hunter and hunted. They're kind of
Yeah,
one. You know,
it's true.
you look at like yeah, you look at like a deer when it's running. The predator is like moving slow. You know, the deer moves slow, and then as soon as the deer starts running fast, the predator starts running fast. And if they slow down, then they both slow down. It's like they really are one. And I think people kind of lose sight of it,
Yeah,
like because their body's just being used
so
by one thing.
you got to take 100% accountability. So like I don't resonate at all with the like wounded empath narrative. It's like you're manifesting all this. Like if you're drawing that being into your reality, like you're getting some kind of payoff from it, you know? Whether it's like
Yeah,
fuel or, the victim fuel or whatever.
yeah. Predators attract prey. Prey attracts predators. And then yeah, like it's a lot of people like to stay with people because it's like, oh well, I'm better than them. I know I'm better than them. I can judge them. That they're the villain. And it's like it's a whole nother side of narcissism.
Um, Someone asked, what do you mean as a parasite? The ego mind? I don't know if I don't think the ego is a parasite. The ego is a form that can house parasites or be converted into a parasite form. What do you
I think like there's various faculties, right? We created in the likeness of the creator, so creator got a lot of faculties. You know what I mean? Like we could say God is love, but God is also justice. God is also will. God is also divine thought or whatever. There's a lot of you could call all them things God or whatever. So it's like all these faculties that make up God or the likeness of the creator, and people have all those faculties within them. And if your body isn't in alignment or it hasn't activated all those faculties, and you don't really realize the the creator or the origin of those faculties, then you're going to identify with those various levels of yourself instead of, being the whole you. So like somebody might be totally locked into their auditory thought. Somebody might be totally identifying with their emotions. Somebody might be totally identifying with execution and justice, and they abandon other areas of themselves. They never investigate their whole self and realize their whole self. So they that area has become parasitic. It's like if a knight was a king instead of the king being the king. It's like the pawn is now the king. If you're in the root chakra, I think if you look at it as chess, it's easier. It's like if you're in the root chakra, it's like you're at the pawn level, and the pawn plays, a significant role. It's still a part of the game. You can still win the war with a pawn. And so, like, if you're in your idea of yourself, concepts of yourself, if you're in like the sensual parts of you, your physical identification, like you're identifying with your body, is desires, is personas, then you're at like the pawn level, and if you can move up, if you fully inhabit the body, then you can realize the other levels and layers to you, to where you like start to realize, all the way up, the knights and the bishops, the rooks, the queen and king and everything. All of those parts are a part of one being, which is you. But if you haven't, afforded yourself the space or the time, whatever, to investigate and realize those parts of you, then you're gonna falsely identify with a lower faculty, and then that area becomes the throne, and that's parasitic. I mean, you just forfeit all those other areas. So now you're like, if you even if some people are satisfied with the status of being like, oh, I'm a knight, at least I'm a knight and I'm not a pawn. And it's like, but you could be a king. But they're like, nah, I'm okay with being a knight. I have status over these pawns. So it's like, now you
Exactly.
now you yeah, now you lose connection with the king faculty within yourself. So now you have something external to you being
Or
your
queen.
king. Be- yeah, so it's like a parasite. Yeah, definitely. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's um it's a parasite too. It's external. It's all become externalized now. The government has now gone from inside of you to outside of you, and people are okay with the status. You know?
All right, we'll
I,
do one.
if I can drive a Bugatti and be a knight, I'm cool with that. I don't need total autonomy. I don't need to know eternity and all facets of myself. I'm cool with this. I can dominate these pawns. All right.
All right, how to avoid sugar. It's like in everything. It is. They literally like I mentioned like they like hide like the citric acid. Like I was like, oh, I always thought citric acid was lemons. Apparently, it's a fungus, black mold, basically derived preservative. Um, and then they like these parasitic consciousness like they hide. So I think the sugar they like sneak it in everything. Like if they sneak it in the ketchup, they sneak it. I think the best way to avoid is just my new rule for myself is like I don't want to say rule that sounds authoritative. My new principle is um, nothing preserved. Like why? Because if it's preserved, it's not it's not alive. They had to do something, which is usually like aligning it with mold frequency for it to stay stuck. And what that actually does is it throws off your body clock. So one of the best things I'm noticing is like eating like fresh is like I'm more aligned with the timing of reality. And this all sounds crazy talk until you actually experience it and you're like, oh my God, I've been rushing my whole life because I've been arresting time through these preserved foods and having to make up for this gap of artificialness. So, as extreme as it sounds, like I would say no more shelf life stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are eating preserved things that have preservatives that they call them like forever chemicals. Like they last longer than you would even be alive, and your body doesn't even know how to get rid of that shit. So,
Yeah.
and, it's just precipitating in your bones now and breaking your, because like you reach regenerate, every so often. You know what I mean? Like they say every 7 years, you you regenerate your bones and everything. And if you got preservatives and shit that's getting precipitated into your bones and breaking the makeup of your cells and your blood cells down because it's into the fucking marrow now. Now you you're regenerating from a broken template. So when you're young, you got a more fresh template and you regenerate faster, and you not getting so you're not having so much recovery time. But once you get to 20, 30 years of regenerating from a deteriorated template, it's only going to get worse for the following 20, 30 years, to where now, yeah, you're just breaking down. And like people call that aging, but that's like really weathering. It's
Ooh.
not really aging.
So true. So much of this aging, I think, is just lifestyle. Like I remember when people didn't have gray hairs until their like 70s. Now you see some people getting them in their 30s, and like it's just it's just degradation. It's unnatural. I think if we were truly healthy and eating natural, like you wouldn't see the type of like wear and tear that you see with aging these days.
Yeah, and also, like I was saying, the parasite wants a bunch of recessive traits on the planet to have as many hosts just spreading, that line of consciousness. And it's like some people were designed to only live a shorter amount of time, so it's so much easier for them to live a lustful life because they're like, look, I'm gonna die young, so I gotta just experience all the sensual pleasures as much as I can because that's what a good life is. And then people that was out here living, like Sebi was saying, over 140 years or longer than that, even going to the Bible or different references to people living hundreds of years. They, like I was saying, they bred with NPCs. They bred with people that were designed to only last a short period of time because there was a slave class that was created. A slave class of people was created, like selectively bred to exist. And then people started to breed with their slaves, like whether it's because they wanted to create a bunch of numbers to have a kingdom, to be able to take over other kingdoms or whatever you want to look at it. But one way or another, people are supposed to be living way longer than they do
Are
now,
you
but they've crossbred with recessives that are designed to have a shorter timeline. So yeah, women now living on this short clock, like, oh, if I don't have a baby by 40, then that's my window's closed.
right? It feels like it's thrown off, right? It's like, wait, by the time someone's just maturing and kind of getting into adulthood, it's like a small little gap and then deterioration. Like it's so clearly off, like the rhythm, right?
Yeah. If you live in 200 years, then like you look at like in the Bible, I think Rebecca had a kid at like 90. You know what I mean? I think that was just like regular stuff. You know what I mean? Like it was like, okay, I think at this point now, like 40 should be like the standard. But we so broken down that it's like 40 just seems old. I mean, which is crazy.
That's what people are taking it as. It's kind of like that's when people are like hanging up their hats. So like, well, my youth is done. But like when I see that people are really living in true nutrition, like they're active until their 70s, 80s, like and they look youthful. Like there's like youthfulness to them as much as they can be given what we have in our diet still.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. I mean, you see it all the time. I think Al Pacino. I mean, obviously he's not the healthiest guy in the world. I think Al Pacino just had a baby. I think he like 80. You know what I mean? I think if Al Pacino, the not healthiest dude, is having a baby, I think we could do better. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up right here. So, reminder September 29th, 21-day Parasite Cleanse. If you want to get these critters out of your being and experience a massive life shift, we're holding space for that. So you can register at scarlettantrika.com/no parasites or reach out to one of us and we'll set it up. We'll set you up. Thank you for
Word,
joining.
man.
Pleasure
Yeah.
you as always, Taylor. And
Oh, no, thank you.
Peace.
All right, yeah. And everybody ain't watching, y'all should YouTube search Inception Parasite scene. It's a clutch scene. This is like a 3-minute clip. I think it's worth it though.
I want to watch that now.
Yeah. Word. Well, all right then.
Peace.
Peace. Talk to you. So yeah, man. You already know. Patreon.com/Taylor Durden. And it's $4 for my Patreon, or it's $50 for a half hour for consultation, $50 for all my books and my 5 or 6 audiobooks, and $50 for a half hour breathwork instruction. So that's it, man. I'm also, yeah, I'm back home, so if y'all want me to make sweatsuits and stuff again, you know, well, I can do that. Whatever you want to do, your name or a saying or something, whatever. You can scroll down and look at my work. It's on my page. So that's it, man. Thank y'all for tuning